Hey everyone, I'm Joe Mayers, and this is the Think Forever Storytelling Podcast. This week, we have the conclusion of last week's story, so for our first-time watchers and listeners, you're going to want to go back and listen to last week's episode first. With that, please enjoy Alyssa Poblete's story, Justice and Mercy, Part 2. The days blended into one another, punctuated only by the rumors of plague. Gnats and flies, dying cattle and painful boils, each one louder than the last, like a drumbeat building toward something final. Word spread through the brickyard from hushed voices. Someone's ox dropped dead mid-field. A woman woke to find her goats rotting in the pen. A merchant's skin had blistered so badly he clawed his arms bloody and ran screaming into the river. Still, the work didn't stop. Dagon barked louder than usual, but even his voice had lost something. A strain crept into his orders, a sharpness, a crack at the edge. Jariah noticed. He watched Dagon more now. Not just out of hatred, but interest. The whip still swung, but the hand that held it wasn't quite as steady. "You think he's afraid?" Keturah whispered beside him one morning as they stacked bricks near the edge of the yard. Jariah didn't answer right away. He glanced at Dagon, spitting commands at a worker who couldn't lift his load, the taskmaster's face slick with sweat despite the morning chill. "He should be," Jariah muttered. That afternoon, they passed a row of livestock pens on their way home. The air stank of rot. Cattle carcasses lay bloated and stiff in the straw. Vultures circled lazily overhead. "How can they be so blind?" Keturah muttered. Jariah didn't answer. He couldn't stop staring at the dead animals. "Moses says Adonai is hardening Pharaoh's heart," Keturah continued, quieter now. "So there won't be any doubt. So everyone will know he's not just a Hebrew God. He's the only God." He exhaled. "If they don't see it now, I don't know what will convince them." Jariah watched a vulture land on a fence post, wings folding in tight. Its eyes glinted. "I'm just thankful God is finally doing something," Keturah added, his voice carrying more weight than usual. They were still working, though no one could explain why. The Egyptians looked more like ghosts than rulers now, limping, coughing, staring off as if waiting for the sky to fall. And yet, the bricks still had to be stacked. Jariah didn't see Dagon approach. One moment he was lifting a bundle of straw, and the next, the taskmaster's shadow loomed beside him, silent, unmoving. He braced for the crack of the whip, but it didn't come. Instead, Dagon's voice came low, almost unsure. "Your God, Adonai, is he doing all of this?" Jariah froze. He hated hearing the name Adonai spoken on Dagon's lips. He turned slowly. Dagon looked hollow. Not defeated exactly, but worn. His face was thinner, his eyes sunken. A thick boil stretched across his jawline, half-healed, the skin around it still red and raw. Jariah's voice was flat. "Yes." Dagon nodded once, as if that's what he expected. He opened his mouth and closed it, then said, "What does he want?" That question, simple and desperate, hung between them. Jariah didn't answer. He couldn't. He stared at the man who had whipped him into the dirt, who had spat on his name, and now dared to ask what God wanted. Later that night, word traveled fast. Dagon had met with one of the elders. He'd asked for more scrolls, more stories. He'd wanted to know Adonai's name in full. Some said he wept. Some said he prayed. The Israelites buzzed with cautious wonder. A few scoffed, but most were stunned and hopeful. Could it be? Was Pharaoh's grip slipping so far that even the taskmasters were reaching for mercy? Atalia found Jeriah sitting in the corner, sharpening a splintered tool with a jagged rock, his face like stone. "He's asking questions," she said softly. "That's something." Jeriah didn't look at her. "It's too late for questions." She crouched beside him, resting a hand on his arm. "Isn't that what grace is for? It's never too late." He yanked his arm away. "You didn't see his face when Father died. You didn't hear his laughter when I fell. You didn't feel that whip. Don't talk to me about grace." Atalia didn't flinch. "I did see it. I've seen it all. I just haven't let it own me. Don't forget what our Father always taught us." She stood and walked away, her silence more cutting than her words. Jeriah stewed as he paced back and forth. He knew what she was saying, but everything in him didn't want to think about it. He had been a boy, maybe 8 or 9, when it happened. He'd stolen a piece of bread from a neighbor's basket, just a crust, but enough to feel guilty. His father had found out, of course. Nothing ever slipped past his father. That night, instead of shouting or striking, his father had taken him out behind the house, where the stars could be seen clearly over the rooftops. They sat in silence for a long time. Then his father said, "What do you think you deserve?" Jeriah had lowered his head, ashamed. "To be punished?" His father nodded slowly. "And what do you want?" Jeriah blinked, confused by the question. "To not be punished?" His father had smiled, not cruelly, but with a kind of sad softness. "That's grace, receiving what you don't deserve." He paused, then added, "You'll need to learn both sides of it, son. How to receive it, and one day, how to give it." Jeriah hadn't understood then, but now he did. When he was the one who needed grace, he didn't plead for justice. He had just hoped someone would let him go. He let out a tense sigh, trying his best to put the memory behind him. The camp buzzed with energy the next day. Moses had spoken. Word had spread quickly, skipping from household to household like fire leaping from dry wood. Take a lamb for each household. Slaughter it at twilight. Spread its blood on the doorposts and lintels of your homes. Roast the meat. Eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Eat it in haste, with sandals on your feet, your cloak tucked in, your staff in hand. For tonight the Lord will pass through Egypt. Fathers sharpened knives in near-reverent silence. Mothers kneaded unleavened dough with tears slipping down their cheeks. Children watched with wide eyes, sensing the weight of something they didn't fully understand. At twilight, Jeriah crouched beside their family lamb, Tikva. Tikva was the kind of lamb that thought it was a house pet, no matter how hard they tried to treat it otherwise. Secretly, Jeriah knew that it was Atalia's fault. She was always smuggling treats and cuddling with him when no one was watching. Tikva nuzzled his head into Jeriah's lap, always affectionate with him. He looked up at Jeriah with wide, unblinking eyes, his chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. He was young, innocent, quiet. Jeriah hated that he didn't struggle. With sober care, he pressed a hand against Tikva's neck to steady it, fingers brushing over his soft, warm wool. The lamb let out a faint bleat, almost like a sigh. Jeriah swallowed hard. A lamb for every household. He had grown up hearing the stories, the promises, the covenant, but now the blood was real, and the death was in his hands. He glanced toward the doorway. Atalia and their mother stood watching, tears streaming down their faces. Jariah looked down again, and in a swift motion pulled the blade across the lamb's throat. Hot blood spilled fast, dark and shocking. It soaked the basin below, splattering his hands and arms. Tikva's legs kicked once, then stilled. Jariah stared at it. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. The innocent dies so the guilty can live. The irony wasn't lost on him. Jariah stared blankly in front of him for a few moments, letting the waves of grief pass over him. "Come, there is work to be done," Mother said as she grabbed the lamb. Jariah got up and reached for a bundle of hyssop to dip in the basin. Gripping it tightly, he approached the door. "Let this be enough," he whispered. Atalia stood behind him, hands clasped to her chest. "It's really happening," she whispered. Jariah didn't respond. He brushed the blood across the top beam, then each side. The smell of iron filled the air. Inside, Keturah was already packing. Not much, just what they could carry. He kept asking questions. Would they really leave tonight? What would freedom feel like? Would the Egyptians chase them? Jariah didn't have answers. The fire was already glowing in the pit. The scent of roasting lamb filled the air. Their mother moved with quiet efficiency, but Jariah caught the trembling in her fingers. "I think we should invite Dagon," Atalia said cautiously as she entered the room. Jariah stopped mid-step. "What?" She swallowed. "You heard Moses. Anyone who takes refuge under the blood will be spared. This isn't just for us, it's for anyone who believes." Jariah stared at her. "You want him in our house?" She nodded, cautious but firm. "He's been listening, asking questions. They say he professed faith in Adonai. I heard he has a son." Jariah felt the heat rise in his chest. "He's a murderer, Atalia." "He's a human being," she replied gently. "And so were we when God remembered us. Do you think you've earned what's coming tonight? Any of us?" The room went quiet. Jariah's jaw clenched. "You don't know him like I do." "No," she said. "But Adonai does, and he's the one who draws the line between judgment and mercy, not us." Jariah looked down at his hands, still stained with blood. He didn't answer. Outside, the sun dipped low, dragging the shadows long across the dusty ground. Somewhere in the distance, a lamb cried out before falling silent. The table was set. Flatbread, still warm from the fire, rested in a shallow basket. A bowl of bitter herbs, sharp and pungent, sat beside the roasted lamb, its skin crisp and dark, its scent filling the small space with the richness of fat, spice, and smoke. Jariah stood motionless near the doorframe, staring at the meal. They were covered, marked, spared. Without this lamb, I'd be condemned too. He knew it, felt it in his bones. Adonai's judgment wasn't just coming for Pharaoh. It was coming for sin, and that included him. He closed his eyes, gratitude overwhelming him. Outside, Jariah heard the faint whimper of a little boy. Turning his head, he locked eyes on them, Dagon and his family. His young son gripped onto his father as they walked through the streets. Dagon called out, "Can anyone help us? Please!" he cried. Just then, his son began to wail along with his mother. The sorrow and terror on their faces was horrifying. "Jariah," Atalia whispered, "please." She stared at her brother, eyes filled with desperation. Jariah didn't move. He couldn't. Atalia reached for his arm. "You have to invite him in." Jariah's heart thundered. The fire popped loudly behind him. "No," he said. "I can't. He doesn't deserve it." Jariah turned away, the tension within him almost unbearable. Could justice and mercy coexist? Jariah stared at the roasted lamb again, innocent, spotless, broken, bloodied for him. The smell wrapped around Jariah, heavy and holy. His chest ached. "That's grace." His father's words reverberated in his mind. "Receiving what you don't deserve." Grace. Mercy. Peace washed over him then, and suddenly his choice was clear. "Dagon!" Jariah yelled out into the night. "Come inside." They ate in silence. The roasted lamb, tender and rich, was passed from hand to hand. The bitter herbs bit at the tongue, a reminder of their sorrow, their suffering. The unleavened bread cracked dryly in their mouths, hastily made, ready for flight. Their cloaks were belted, their sandals strapped. Staffs leaned against their chairs. They were eating like people prepared to run, but no one was moving. Every few moments, Jariah's eyes drifted to the door, to the dark beyond the blood-stained lintel. The fire cracked. Keturah chewed slowly, his gaze distant. Their mother bowed her head as she ate. Atalia sat close beside Jariah. Outside, the stillness was unnerving. Not even the dogs barked. The air pressed down like it was holding its breath. Then, somewhere in the distance, a scream. High, guttural, piercing. Everyone at the table froze. Then another, closer. A low moan building to a wail, the sound of something ripped open, primal and inconsolable. It came from the Egyptian quarter. First one house, then another. A wave of grief rolling through the streets of Goshen and beyond, women crying out, men shouting, voices collapsing under the weight of sudden, unimaginable loss. The Lord passed through Egypt that night, and every firstborn son in the land was struck down, from Pharaoh's own son to the child of an Egyptian taskmaster. Keturah's spoon slipped from his hand and clattered onto the floor. He covered his ears. Their mother wept softly, head bowed low. Atalia trembled beside her brother. Jariah looked up across the table at Dagon. Dagon's mouth clenched tightly around his teeth, eyes squinting back tears. A sharp breath escaped his lips. Then a sob tore out of him, raw and ugly, his shoulders heaving as he breathed through his tears. His cries filled the air as he squeezed his son tightly. "Thank you, God! Thank you, God! Thank you!" he wailed. His young son sobbed into his father's shoulder, the realization finally hitting him that he had been spared. "When I see the blood, I will pass over you," Atalia rehearsed. The promise had been kept. Jariah looked at the blood on the doorpost, now dry and dark in the firelight. The cries of Egypt still echoed in the streets when the knock came at the door. 3 beats, then a pause. The signal. Keturah rose first, eyes filled with excitement. Jariah stood too, heart thudding. Their mother reached for the bag already packed by the door. Atalia rushed to gather the flatbread and bundle it in cloth. Outside, voices were rising, this time not in grief, but in hot anger. "Get out! Go! Leave this place!" The Egyptians were pouring into the streets, shouting, begging the Israelites to flee. Some pressed silver and gold into Hebrew hands, urging them to take whatever they needed. Just go. Pharaoh had relented. The command had come. It was time. Jeriah flung the door open and stepped into the street. For the first time in his life, he wasn't walking to the brickyard. He was walking away. Atalia emerged beside him, carrying her pack. Their mother followed, Keturah clinging tightly to her hand. More families streamed from their homes, torches in hand, garments gathered, sandals kicking up dusk. "Wait," Jeriah called. He turned back to the house, running as fast as he could. He found Dagon and his family standing out front, looking lost as they watched, longing at the hordes of people fleeing. Jeriah met Dagon's eyes. "Well, are you coming?" Thank you for watching or listening to this week's episode of the Think Forever Storytelling Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. Feel free to leave us a comment here or on our socials at Go Think Forever. And be sure to join us next week when I will be interviewing the author, Alyssa Poblete, about her story, Justice and Mercy.